Picture this scenario. You're sitting across from your 65-year-old future self at a coffee shop, and they're either thanking you for the best decision you ever made, or they're looking at you with that mixture of disappointment and regret that makes your stomach drop. The difference between these two conversations isn't whether you got lucky with some crypto investment or inherited money from a rich uncle. It's whether you understood one simple mathematical principle that most people completely ignore until it's too late. And here's the crazy part. We're not talking about some complex investment strategy that requires a finance degree to understand. We're talking about $500 a month. That's it. $500 that could literally transform your entire future, but only if you start early enough to let the most powerful force in finance work its magic. My name is Keith, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, compound interest, and why some people retire comfortably while others work until they literally can't anymore. If you've ever wondered what the difference is between people who build real wealth and those who just hope Social Security will somehow be enough, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see retirement planning in a completely different way. Now, before we dive into how $500 monthly turns into over $1 million, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When you think about retirement, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture yourself on a beach somewhere, finally free from alarm clocks and Monday morning meetings. Or perhaps you imagine having time for all those hobbies you never got around to, traveling to places you've always wanted to see, or just having the freedom to spend your days however you want. But here's what most people don't think about, and honestly, it's probably because it's too scary to consider. What if retirement isn't a reward for decades of hard work? What if it's just a longer, more stressful version of your current financial struggles? Except now you're older, possibly dealing with health issues, and you have no income coming in. The reality is that most Americans are completely unprepared for retirement. And I don't mean they're slightly behind on their savings goals. I mean they're facing a financial disaster that will define the last 20 to 30 years of their lives. According to recent studies, the average retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64 is around $100. That might sound like a decent amount until you realize it needs to last potentially 25 years or more. We're talking about trying to live on maybe $400 or $500 per month from their savings, plus whatever Social Security provides. And if you think Social Security is going to solve this problem, the average monthly benefit is around $1,700, so we're looking at people trying to survive on maybe $2,200 per month total after working their entire adult lives. But here's where things get really interesting, and this is where most people's understanding of money completely breaks down. The difference between retiring broke and retiring wealthy isn't necessarily about making more money. It's about understanding time. More specifically, it's about understanding how time transforms small, consistent actions into life-changing results. This is what financial experts call compound interest, but honestly, that term doesn't really capture the magic of what's actually happening. I prefer to think of it as the retirement snowball effect, because just like a snowball rolling down a hill, your money starts small but picks up more snow. I mean more money, as it goes, until eventually it becomes this massive force that seems to grow almost by itself. Let's start with a simple example that will probably blow your mind. If a 25-year-old starts investing $500 per month in a basic index fund that averages 8% returns annually, which is actually below the long-term average of the stock market, by the time they're 65, they'll have approximately $1.4 million from $500 monthly contributions. Now, let's break this down because the math is actually pretty incredible. Over 40 years, this person will have contributed a total of $240,000 of their own money. That means over $1.1 million of their final balance comes not from their contributions but from compound growth. Their money literally made more money than they contributed themselves. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, and this is the part that makes compound interest almost feel like magic. The majority of that growth doesn't happen gradually over time. It actually accelerates dramatically in the later years. In their first decade of investing, from age 25 to 35, their account grows from $0 to about $90,000. That's solid progress, but it doesn't feel life-changing yet. From age 35 to 45, it grows from $90,000 to around $275,000. Now we're talking about some serious money, but still not enough to retire on. But here's where things get absolutely wild. From age 45 to 55, their balance grows from $275,000 to over $600,000, and in just the final decade, from age 55 to 65, it explodes from $650,000 to $1.4 million. Think about that for a second. In the last 10 years alone, their account grows by more than $750,000. That's more growth in one decade than they accumulated in the previous 3 decades combined. This is the power of compound interest reaching its full potential. The snowball has gotten so big that it's picking up massive amounts of snow with each roll down the hill. Now, you might be thinking, well, Keith, that's great for someone who starts at 25, but what about the rest of us? And that's actually where this story gets really fascinating, because timing is everything when it comes to compound interest. Let's say someone waits until they're 35 to start investing that same $500 per month. They follow the exact same strategy, earn the same returns, but they just got started 10 years later. You might think they'd end up with 10 years less of growth, maybe 1.1 million instead of 1.4 million. But that's not how compound interest works. By waiting just 10 years to start, they end up with only about $850,000 at retirement. They lost over $500,000 by waiting 1 decade to get started. And if someone waits until 45 to begin their retirement investing journey, contributing that same $500 month, they'll accumulate around $400,000 by age 65. Still a significant amount, but a fraction of what they could have had with an earlier start. The person who started at 25 ends up with 3.5 times more money than the person who started at 45, even though they both contributed $500 every single month and earned identical returns. The only difference was time. But here's something that might surprise you, and it definitely surprised me when I first learned about it. The early years of investing, when you can barely see any progress, and you're wondering if you're wasting your money, those are actually the most valuable contributions you'll ever make. That $500 you invest at age 25 will grow to over $21,000 by the time you retire. But the $500 you invest at age 55 will only grow to about $1,100 by retirement. The exact same amount of money, but the early contribution is worth 20 times more in the end because it had decades to compound. This is why financial advisors always talk about starting early, but I don't think most people really understand the magnitude of the difference. We're not talking about earning a little more money by starting early. We're talking about the difference between financial independence and financial stress for the rest of your life. The difference between having options and having none. The difference between retirement being a reward and retirement being a burden. Now, let's talk about what happens inside that $500 monthly investment, because this is where most people get overwhelmed and decide investing is too complicated for them. But here's the truth, successful retirement investing is actually incredibly boring. The most effective strategy is also the simplest one. You take that $500 every month and invest it in a low-cost index fund that tracks the overall stock market. That's it. No stock picking, no trying to time the market, no complex trading strategies, just consistent, automatic investing in a diversified portfolio of American businesses. Why does this work so well? Because when you invest in an index fund, you're essentially buying a tiny piece of the entire American economy. You own a fraction of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and hundreds of other companies. When these businesses grow and become more profitable over time, your investment grows with them. You're not trying to predict which individual companies will succeed or fail. You're betting that American businesses as a whole will continue to innovate, grow, and create value over the long term. And historically, that's been an incredibly safe bet. The stock market has averaged about 10% annual returns over the past century, including the Great Depression, multiple recessions, world wars, and every other economic crisis you can imagine. There have been years when the market dropped 30% or more, and there have been years when it gained 30% or more. But over long periods, the ups and downs smooth out into consistent, wealth-building growth. This is why time is so important in investing. The longer you stay invested, the more likely you are to experience the long-term average returns rather than the short-term volatility. But let's address the elephant in the room, because I know what many of you are thinking right now. Keith, $500 a month sounds nice, but I can barely afford my rent and groceries. How am I supposed to find an extra $500 every month? And that's a completely valid concern, because for many people, especially younger people just starting their careers, $500 monthly feels impossible. But here's the beautiful thing about the retirement snowball effect. It works with any amount of money. The principles are exactly the same whether you're investing $500 or $5,000 per month. If you can only afford $50 monthly right now, start there. Over 40 years at 8% returns, that $50 grows to about $140,000. That's not millions, but it's significantly better than zero, and it gets you into the habit of consistent investing. More importantly, as your income grows throughout your career, you can increase your contributions. Maybe you start with $50 in your 20s, bump it up to $200 in your 30s, and eventually reach $500 or more in your 40s. The key is starting the snowball rolling, even if it starts small. And here's something most people don't realize about their own financial capacity. $500 per month breaks down to about $1,650. That's less than many people spend on coffee and lunch. I'm not suggesting you should live on bread and water to fund your retirement, but I am pointing out that most people have more flexibility in their budgets than they realize. Maybe it's reducing your dining out budget, choosing a slightly less expensive apartment, or driving your car a year longer before upgrading. When you break it down to daily amounts and think about the long-term impact, these trade-offs start looking pretty reasonable. There's also something powerful that happens psychologically when you start investing consistently, even in small amounts. You begin to see yourself as an investor, and that identity shift affects your other financial decisions. When you're actively building wealth for your future, you naturally become more conscious of how you spend money today. You start asking questions like, is this purchase really worth delaying my financial independence? This mindset shift often results in finding more money to invest without feeling deprived. Now, let's talk about something that can dramatically accelerate your retirement snowball, and that's employer matching in 401k plans. If your employer offers a 401k match, this is literally the closest thing to free money you'll ever encounter in your lifetime. Let's say your employer matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary. If you make $50,000 annually and contribute 6% to your 401k, you're putting in $3,000 per year and your employer adds another $1,500. That's a 50% immediate return on your investment before any market gains. This is such an incredible deal that not taking advantage of it is like leaving money on the table every paycheck. Even if you can't afford to contribute the full amount to get the maximum match right away, contribute something. If you can only afford 2% of your salary, that's still free matching money from your employer. And as your income increases, prioritize maxing out that employer match before increasing other investments. But here's where the employer match becomes even more powerful when combined with the retirement snowball effect. Let's go back to our original example of $500 monthly contributions. If half of that comes from employer matching, you're only contributing $250 of your own money each month, but you're getting the full benefit of $500 monthly going toward your retirement. This essentially doubles the power of every dollar you contribute, making the final numbers even more impressive. Let's also talk about tax advantages, because retirement accounts aren't just about compound interest, they're also about legally avoiding taxes, which can significantly boost your wealth building. When you contribute to a traditional 401k or IRA, you get an immediate tax deduction. If you're in a 22% tax bracket and contribute $6,000 annually, you save $1,021 in taxes that year. It's like the government is paying you to save for retirement. Even better, all the growth inside your retirement account is tax deferred. You don't pay taxes on dividends, capital gains, or any of the compound growth until you withdraw the money in retirement. And when you do withdraw it, you'll likely be in a lower tax bracket than during your peak earning years, so you'll pay less in taxes overall. This tax deferral allows more of your money to compound over time, accelerating the snowball effect. There's also the Roth option, which works differently but can be even more powerful for younger investors. With a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, you pay taxes on the money before you contribute it, but then all future growth and withdrawals are completely tax-free. If you're young and currently in a low tax bracket, paying taxes now and getting tax-free growth for decades can result in massive tax savings over your lifetime. Imagine retiring with $1.4 million in a Roth account. That's $1.4 million you can withdraw without paying a single dollar in taxes. Compare that to having the same amount in a traditional account where you might pay $200,000 or more in taxes when you withdraw it. The Roth option essentially gives you a tax-free retirement, which is like getting a 20 to 30% bonus on your entire retirement savings. Now let's address some of the fears and objections that prevent people from starting their retirement snowball. The most common concern I hear is, what if the stock market crashes right when I need the money? This is a legitimate concern, but it misunderstands how retirement withdrawals actually work. You don't retire on your 65th birthday and immediately withdraw all your money. You withdraw small amounts each year, maybe 3 to 4% of your total balance annually. Even if the market crashes the year you retire, you still have decades for it to recover. Historical data shows that even the worst stock market crashes recover within a few years, and the long-term upward trend continues. The bigger risk isn't market crashes, it's inflation eroding your purchasing power if you keep your money in safe investments that earn 1% or 2% annually. Over 40 years, inflation can cut your purchasing power in half, making your conservative investments lose value in real terms. Another common concern is, what if I need the money before retirement? This is why financial advisors recommend building an emergency fund before focusing on retirement investing. You should have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in a regular savings account before putting significant money toward retirement. This emergency fund handles unexpected expenses and prevents you from having to withdraw money from your retirement accounts early, which comes with penalties and taxes. But here's something interesting that happens once you start building your retirement snowball. As your balance grows larger, it actually provides a form of psychological security even though you can't easily access it. Knowing you have $100,000 or $200,000 growing in your retirement account makes you feel more financially stable overall. You might be less likely to panic about short-term financial challenges because you know your long-term security is being handled. Let's talk about what that $1.4 million actually means in terms of retirement lifestyle, because raw numbers don't always translate to real-world understanding. Financial planners typically recommend withdrawing 3 to 4% of your retirement balance annually to ensure your money lasts throughout retirement. Using the 4% rule, $1.4 million provides about $56,000 in annual retirement income, or roughly $4,700 per month. Combined with Social Security benefits, which might add another $2,000 monthly, you're looking at total retirement income around $6,700 per month. That's not live like a billionaire money, but it's comfortable middle-class retirement income that allows you to maintain your lifestyle without financial stress. You can travel, pursue hobbies, help your children or grandchildren, and generally enjoy your retirement years without constantly worrying about money. Compare this to someone who never started their retirement snowball and is trying to live on just Social Security. That $2,000 monthly income might cover basic living expenses, but it doesn't leave room for much else. No travel, limited entertainment, constant worry about unexpected expenses, and the stress of knowing that any major expense could create a financial crisis. The difference between these two retirement scenarios comes down to whether someone understood and acted on the retirement snowball principle during their working years. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because $1.4 million isn't the end of the snowball's growth. If you're withdrawing 4% annually in retirement, that means you're leaving 96% of your balance invested, and it continues growing. Even with conservative 6% returns and 4% annual withdrawals, your account balance might actually continue growing throughout your retirement. You could potentially leave more money to your children than you ever saved during your working years. This is the ultimate power of the retirement snowball effect. It's not just about funding your own retirement, it's about building generational wealth that can provide financial security for your family long after you're gone. The $500 monthly investment that started as a personal financial goal transforms into a legacy that can impact your children's and grandchildren's financial futures. Now let's get practical about how to actually start building your retirement snowball. Because understanding the theory is one thing, but taking action is what actually creates results. The first step is determining how much you can realistically invest each month. Look at your budget and identify areas where you could reduce spending without significantly impacting your quality of life. Maybe it's cooking at home more often, choosing a less expensive phone plan, or reducing subscription services you barely use. Start with an amount that feels manageable, even if it's small. $100 or $200 monthly is infinitely better than zero, and you can increase it over time. The most important thing is establishing the habit of consistent investing. Set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your retirement account so the investment happens without requiring willpower or remembering to do it each month. Choose simple, low-cost index funds rather than trying to pick individual stocks or complex investment products. A total stock market index fund or S&P 500 index fund provides instant diversification and historically solid returns with minimal fees. Avoid the temptation to constantly check your account balance or make changes based on short-term market movements. The retirement snowball effect requires patience and consistency, not active management. Increase your contributions whenever your income increases. Got a raise? Put half of the additional income toward retirement and use the other half to improve your current lifestyle. Received a tax refund or bonus? Consider putting a portion of it toward your retirement account as a lump sum contribution. These additional contributions can significantly accelerate your snowball's growth. Take advantage of catch-up contributions if you're over 50. The IRS allows people over 50 to contribute additional amounts to retirement accounts beyond the normal limits. This is designed to help people who got a late start on retirement savings, and it can help accelerate the snowball effect in your later working years. Review and adjust your strategy annually, but don't make frequent changes. Once a year, look at your progress, consider increasing your contributions if possible, and rebalance your portfolio if necessary. But resist the urge to make major changes based on short-term market performance or economic news. The retirement snowball effect works best when left alone to compound over long periods. Here's something that might surprise you about the psychology of building wealth through consistent investing. After the first year or two, it becomes almost addictive in the best possible way. Watching your balance grow month after month, seeing the power of compound interest in action, creates momentum that makes it easier to stick with the plan. You start looking forward to making your monthly contribution because you can see how it's building towards something significant. Many people also find that starting their retirement snowball affects their other financial behaviors in positive ways. When you're actively building long-term wealth, you naturally become more conscious of all your financial decisions. You might negotiate better deals on insurance, avoid unnecessary debt, or look for ways to increase your income. The retirement investing habit often serves as a gateway to overall better financial management. Let's also talk about what happens if you're reading this and thinking, I'm already in my 40s or 50s, is it too late for me? The answer is absolutely not, but your strategy might need to be more aggressive. If you're starting later in life, you might need to contribute more than $500 monthly to achieve your retirement goals. Maybe it's $800 or $1,000 monthly, but the same principles apply. The retirement snowball effect still works. You just need to give it more initial momentum to make up for lost time. Consider working a few years longer than originally planned, which can dramatically improve your retirement outlook. Each additional year of working potentially adds tens of thousands to your retirement balance while delaying the need to withdraw from it. The combination of more contributions, more growth time, and delayed withdrawals can help catch up for a late start.